Hey there, everyone. This is Sarina, and I am the community magic maker at Heather Ashamara and Warrior Goddess. I am also a Warrior Goddess mentor, and I'm a licensed master level social worker. I work in clinical therapy, and I also am a professor at a local university. And so today, I'm going to be sharing with you about neuroscience and nature and how getting out into nature can really support us in getting grounded, in feeling more regulated, and just having this sense of well being. And so, part of today's talk will just be a really brief talk on the neuroscience behind stress and how we get stressed out. And then I'll be talking a little bit about how nature can be really supportive as we move in the world, especially these next few days, just like this understanding of how we can take breaks to go outside and get really grounded and steady. And if you joined my morning prayer circle, we talked a little bit about this. I did a really great grounding around letting go of the places in our body where we're holding tension and things like that. So you can check that out as well. And I'd actually love to get started with a grounding just to get us all settled here for those of you jumping on. And so let's close our eyes if it feels safe to do so. And if it doesn't feel safe, please don't close your eyes. Just look off to the side, soft gaze, so that way you're not staring directly at the screen. So let's give it a try. And taking a deep breath into your body. With a big exhale. And just allowing yourself to really come here to settle into your physical form. And as you inhale and exhale, allowing your breath to become audible. I don't know about you, but when I do that, I can almost hear the ocean, as one of my yoga instructors says. There's this sound that almost sounds like a very gentle moving of the tide in and out. So taking a few more breaths, just long, maybe even holding at the top of the inhale and then fully exhaling. You can even hold at the exhale before you inhale again. So doing a few more breaths like that. And I encourage you to find a breathing rhythm that feels good to your body right now. It may be different than breathing that you've done before. It may be different than breathing you did this morning, but finding in your own body what feels good to you and just allowing that breathing rhythm to really bring a feeling sense of presence, of calmness to your system. And allowing this stillness to surround you. Beautiful. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes and bringing yourself present here. So I'm so excited to be here with you today and to share just a little glimpse into what I teach a lot of my clients, and also to give us some space to go on a nature break. So I'm probably only going to be talking for maybe 30 minutes or so. And then I'm going to send you out into the world. And our suggestion is to take the following 90 minutes or even few hours to go out in nature somewhere. And we'll talk more about why in a second. So, the place I'd love to start is to talk a little bit about stress. And I don't know about you, but for me and many of the people that I work with, stress has been essentially present probably since the beginning of time, but definitely since COVID-19 started. And so, since about March, April, in that time frame, we've had a ton of stress. And so, I want to start by defining what stress is. So, stress is any deviation from homeostasis. And for a lot of people, that surprises them because they're like, isn't stress always bad? Deviation from homeostasis isn't necessarily negative or positive. It just is what it is. And so, stress is any variation thereof. And stress can be things that are exciting to us, that are inspiring, where our heart races a little bit, we get really excited about something, versus being at our what we call a baseline. And then other types of stress can be stress that often can feel debilitating, that can feel like a heavy blanket, that can feel like the world is going to end, and that's also a different kind of stress. And so we want to be aware for ourselves. And this first piece is really about getting intimate with ourselves, about what's our baseline. Where are we when we're just hanging out, when nothing seems to be exciting us or causing anxiety, but there's just like, this is what's happening. And that's going to be different for many of us. But the process of just paying attention and opening our awareness to what is that like for me and paying attention to it. So we can use the Toltec tool of stalking, 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 to stalk or track ourselves. So imagine a big cat tracking, and we're tracking ourselves to find out, how am I in the world? What gets me moving? What gets me excited? What am I like when things aren't exciting? What am I like when I'm anxious? And just paying attention to how we respond or react to situations. And so many of us may experience stress that then leads to a flight, fight, or freeze response. And this is when our stress has made it to our sympathetic nervous system, and we begin to have this reaction where we're either going to fight somebody, we're going to flight or flee, or we freeze because we don't know what to do. Sometimes people can feel like, if I just freeze, nothing will happen. And we can experience these things from all numerous number of examples, such as having a hard or difficult conversation. So some people, when we're having a direct conversation or when we're having a conversation that's really activating for us, what that can look like is all of a sudden our body doesn't know what to do, and it's detecting that something is going haywire. And its whole job is to keep us safe, right? It's a survival mechanism. And so what's going to start doing is really telling us that we have to fight. We have to be combative. We have to make sure that we're defending ourselves so that way we don't get harmed. Or it's going to tell us that we need to flee. We need to get the heck out of here because things are going down and we don't want to be anywhere where this is happening. And so it's going to want you to run as fast as you can. And then the freeze is that place of just like stopping. And maybe if I don't do anything, it will just go away. And so we can see many of us, I imagine, have had these different responses at different times in our lives. And so that can happen with a difficult conversation. It can also happen when we have an actual, like a physiological danger situation, like a car accident. So we can have that same sort of response. Yeah. So somebody says that they're definitely a freezer. So we can watch in our day-to-day lives if we really stalk ourselves and be able to track, like, oh, I tend to do this, or I tend to do this. And then not just with conversations and not just with, big accidents that might be happening or something like that, but we can do this when we are scrolling through Facebook, or other social media outlets, when we're watching the news. There's all sorts of places where if we're experiencing something and stress shows up, we can go into one of these three places. And so, what happens when we have chronic stress or uncontrollable stress that we can't make it stop, and chronic means it happens over a long period of time, is that it really makes us vulnerable to illnesses. It can compromise our immune system. It also makes us susceptible to different mental challenges. So, if we have a history of our family living with mental illness, or if we in our lifetime have experienced trauma, all of those things can compact and make with our chronic stress or uncontrollable stress even worse. And so we can end up in these places, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to offer this today, of not understanding what's going on, how do I get better, how do I make this stop. And so for some people, what I talk about today may be enough. This may be all you need in order to get started in feeling less challenged right now. And some of you may not be feeling challenged at all right now. And so we just want to make sure that we're reaching all of the pieces. And for others of you, this may not be enough. And you may realize as we're talking that you might want to talk to somebody. And so we highly recommend that if you are in that place, that you do reach out to a mental health professional or somebody that works with mental health challenges. So that way you can get the support that you need. This is by no means a therapy session or meant to replace any sort of medical support that you may need as well. But what I do want to give you is a little taste into this understanding of how our systems work and some really practical ways that you can go out and soothe yourself, be able to self-regulate using nature. And a lot of these, I learned growing up in the desert. So I grew up in the deserts outside of inside Southern California, in the Joshua Tree area. And when I was growing up, we had 13 acres that were ours, but our house didn't bump up against anybody else's house. We're in the desert, there's nothing around us. And so I had sand dunes and mesquite thickets and all sorts of things to play in and hang around. And I would spend hours and hours and hours a day outside using my imagination, using creativity. I would talk to the animals and I would connect with the earth in a really real way, digging my hand into the sand. There were tumbleweeds and all sorts of things. And I was constantly feeling enveloped by the land there, feeling really held. And I used to make these forts inside the mesquite thickets where I would like crawl in them. And there's all sorts of curiosities that would take place. And I would feel this sense of being in a cocoon or being in a cave. And it was really delightful because I could also see outside, like I could see the clear blue sky from the center of the mesquite thickets if I looked through, the little branches. And so that was pretty exciting as well. But there was this experience of being outside that really brought a sense of peacefulness to me, that brought a sense of joy. And then I ended up moving into the city to go to school when I was 18. And I didn't realize what an impact the city would have on my nervous system. And one of the things that no one really talked about was when you go from being in really wide open spaces and spending a lot of time outdoors, and then you move to essentially a concrete jungle, right? That there are consequences to that. And one of the things is that I was spending so much more time inside, much more time, obviously, on our screens, especially in the last 7 months or so. And there was this place of just like not getting out and communing with nature any longer. And in that place, I lost a lot of the safety that I felt from being outside and being outdoors. Fast forward to a couple years ago, I started doing an apprenticeship where I was learning about being out in the wilderness. And I was terrified of being in a forest because A, I'd never really been in a forest, and B, there were all these things, and my flight, fight, and freeze response was definitely on point. It was like, what's happening? There's a sound over there, And so at first, there was this huge response that I was having to being out in the forest. And now I feel this sense of relaxation when I go out there and the sense of being at home. And so I want to acknowledge that as well, that it didn't just start out this way. So, what we know is that when our systems are feeling overwhelmed, when they're feeling um, exhausted, I had this vision come in this morning when I was doing the visualization for the morning prayer that our muscles are tense and our bones are tired. And I just got this sense of fatigue. And I don't know how many of you are feeling this way as well, but COVID-19 has really impacted that within me and within a lot of the people that I'm in communication with. Yeah, and someone is talking about how they aren't able to get to the beach because of COVID-19 and they're really upset. Yeah, absolutely. Like all of our lives, for the most part, all of our lives have been disrupted in some way. Even if we're having a positive experience because we're spending more time at home or we're not traveling as often, we're spending more time with our families. Like some of that is happening as well. And so there is a disruption though. Our homeostasis has been disrupted, regardless of whether that's positive or negative in the way that we're experiencing this. And so when we are more tense, when we're tired and fatigued, I also want to bring in this idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's not a perfect model. In a lot of ways, it doesn't even speak to the inequality that exists within it and people's access to different levels of safety and that sort of thing. But I do think it gives us a really good framework to start a conversation around. And so when we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first layer, so there's a pyramid. Oh, I should have set this up so I could show you all. I'll post it later in the comments. But there's a pyramid, and it's not a pyramid scheme, I promise. And the bottom of the pyramid is where we have to meet our needs first. And so as you go further up the pyramid, those needs also exist, but we have to meet the needs at the bottom first. So the first layer is physiological needs. And so these are things like clean air, clean water, having enough rest, having good nutrition, shelter, all of those types of things that are really about our physiological needs in order to exist. And so if those needs aren't met, we're definitely not doing well. And then the next level up is safety. And with safety, we're talking about things like having enough resources, whether we have employment, health, all of those types of things go into safety. Are we doing well in those measures? And as you continue to go up, we move into belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. And so the bottom half of the pyramid is really focused on safety and physiological needs, which I also consider to be safety needs. And then as we move up to the top, we have things like belonging, which is friendships, being with beloveds, like those types of things, feeling love. Esteem is how much confidence we have, and so on and so forth. As you move up to self-actualization, you're moving into morality and like the existential crises type of examples. But I really want to focus on the bottom half of the pyramid for today because those are the ones that when we go out into nature, my experience has been that we begin to see how to meet those needs at a very basic level. So some of the work that I do is sending folks out into the wilderness for 4 days and 4 nights, and really allowing them to experience what it's like to be out and away from people. And we do a ton of work ahead of time so that they're prepared to do so. But this experience of being out in the wilderness really helped me to see, especially as I experienced it myself, because I've done this multiple times, the places where our nervous system can finally relax, where we can get to a place where we're not stressed, where we're totally rested, where we feel safe. And in that place of safety, in that place of resting, we can really slow down and begin to repair the damage that's happened from so much stress. There's a phenomenon that happens in my experience when we go out into the wilderness and when we go out in nature. And the strongest piece for me is that it usually takes me a couple days, and this is really helpful information now that I've stalked myself and I know that it usually takes me about 2 days to drop into nature. Like being completely unplugged out in nature in a tent or with a tarp and a sleeping bag, but it takes me about 48 hours. And during the time that I leave modern civilization and going out into the wilderness, that 48-hour time frame is really this place where my body feels jarred and it's trying to figure out what's going on because I'm not having the constant dopamine hit of checking my phone or answering emails or anything like that. And simultaneously, it's really freaked out that we're going out into the wilderness or out into nature because it's like, wait, I don't know if I should be in trouble right now. And it's kind of like looking around, really taking stock of what's going on. But what I found is that when I get to that place of really settling in, I slow down to the pace of nature. My body fully relaxes into the earth. I am not in a rush to get anywhere. And there's a lack of a sense of urgency. And urgency is oftentimes a tool of white supremacy. And so, in this way, we're kind of, you know, acting in the resistance to white supremacy because we're stepping fully into ourselves and we're stepping into this place of rest that so often in this world is forgotten. This is so funny. I can tell that I'm stressed right now because I just looked down and my hand was in a ball. So, how many of you are holding stress right now? Whether because of the election or COVID-19 or it's mid-semester mayhem, right? Like, I know I am. I have students emailing me. There's all sorts of things occurring. I will talk about physical restrictions to the outside, and I will give you examples to do in your home for sure. So just taking a breath and letting yourself relax, noticing if you're holding any tension in your jaw. Any tension here is often a common place or behind your eyes. Breathing into those spaces, allowing them to relax. You may have tension right here in your throat. You might have tension in your chest. You might be balling up your fists like I do. But just allowing yourself to breathe. And then remember that you can keep doing these breaks whenever you need to. So I always recommend to folks that when we're struggling, when we've had as much stress as we have, especially over the last several months, that this is a response that's happening because we're chronically stressed. And so what we want to do is really breathe. That is the number one thing that will help you regulate, probably more than anything, is learning to breathe, because so often we're holding our breath. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled talk. So, how can we get into nature? And how can we access this place of really slowing down, of being connected to the outdoors, of bringing those elements within us? And that's the other piece. I won't go into this a whole lot, but if you're interested in reading about this, you can read Heather Ash's book, A Little Book on Big Freedom, which talks about the 4 elements of change. So air, fire, water, and earth are all made up in us. And we can also ally with them outdoors. So we can see how those can show up. The wind is an example of air. Example of fire could be the sun or actual fire. We can ally with water, which could be a creek or a stream, the ocean, and then earth could be dirt, it could be rocks, trees, all sorts of things. So we want to acknowledge that we have the elements within us, so we don't have to go outside to connect with the elements. And we can also use our imagination, which is a really powerful tool. So if you're able to get to a park or to get out on your balcony, if you have a balcony, if you can go in your backyard or walk on a piece of earth somewhere, like somebody's ranch or something like that, a national park or state park, like those are all places that you can go out and get into nature. And if you're unable to go outside for whatever reason, then we can bring the elements to us. And part of that is using our imagination. So we can put on music on a streaming service like Spotify or iTunes or something like that. Finding, yeah, I think YouTube probably also has it. Finding any sort of nature sounds. So finding a creek or like a bubbling creek or ocean waves, all of those types of things are really nice. And then closing your eyes and listening to that can bring your senses alive. So you can remember a time when you went to the beach, or remember a time of when you saw a movie. Maybe you've never been to a beach, but you've seen movies of beaches, or you've heard conversations about them. Allow your imagination to create that, to take you outside for you. You can also, you know, this is probably gonna sound weird. I have jars of earth that I just carry around. And it actually started out because I had really bad anxiety getting on airplanes, and my therapist suggested that I carry a jar of dirt around. And I was like, a jar of dirt? And she was like, yeah, find wet earth, because we were talking about what really soothed my system. And digging my hands in the earth and being able to smell the earth really brought my nervous system down. It really tapped into the places of feeling really calm and grounded. And so we got some earth and I put it in a jar and I would carry it around with me. And so anytime I would start to feel panic, I would unscrew the jar and just sniff. And it would take me back to that moment. So you don't have to get outdoors. You could ask a beloved or a friend, or you might even be able to order one online. I don't know how that would work, but I'm sure you could. You can order most things online these days. But being able to bring the nature piece into you, yeah, sand jar, great. I have tons of desert sand too. And find those things that work for you. So part of your home play assignment is going to be, as you are playing around, whether that's in nature or at your house, bringing nature indoors, is to find what works for you and to jot it down somehow. So I use pen and paper, but you can, put it in your phone or dictate it to somebody. But you want to have some sort of list so that you know the types of things that help you calm down, that help you get grounded and present. And so for me, some of those things are having earth in a jar, which I have a ton of. Other things are if I can get creosote and breathe on it, creosote bush, like it smells like the rain in the desert smells like creosote bush. I didn't know that. I always just called it the smell of desert rain, but I found out in my adulthood that it wasn't this magic smell that just appeared because of the rain. It was the creosote bush. But whenever I'm feeling stressed out, if I can find that smell changes my life. It relaxes every ounce of nervousness in me, and it really helps me feel grounded and present. So figure out what that is for you. For some people, it might be the smell of a swamp or a bayou. It might be going out to a pier and listening to the fish or listening to the sound of the water. There's all sorts of things that can really bring you solace in times when you're stressed out, when you're feeling insecure, when things aren't feeling like they're going right in the world. Other things about nature is that going out in nature can help raise your energy. So for some people, going out in nature can really enliven you and invigorate you. So allow it to do so. Allow your energy to get raised by being out in the elements, or connecting with them, virtually in some way. Also, it can help us clear our emotions. So one of my favorite things to do is to go on a walk, and dig in the earth and then like scream into a hole whenever I'm feeling really frustrated or upset, when I'm feeling resentful, to just allow things to get clear. One of the things that Heather Ash has shared before that she loves to do is go out and throw rocks. So go find what works for you. Allow your emotions to get cleared and held by the mother, by nature, to get carried off by the wind. That can also be really helpful for people, like getting up on mountaintops and proclaiming to the world different things to just get it out of your system. Allow those things to get cleared. Also, being out on the earth, whether that's walking on grass or digging your feet into the sand and things like that, can help you with just grounding your body, like your physical body, getting really grounded, feeling like it's connected to the earth again, and to remind yourself that you are made of the elements can be really helpful. And then the last piece of that is working with the outdoors to help us clear our mental chatter. So one of the things that can initially happen is when we first go outdoors, that there's this like repetitive tape that's going on in our heads. And so you can witness that and just let it float on. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just put my hands on the earth and ask my brain to just kind of like drain out of my hands for a little bit so that I'm not hearing that constant chatter. The other thing is that if you use your breath while you're outside, and you can do this indoors too for sure, but there's this way that we can get below the busyness. We can get below all of the conversation and the chatter, the mental chatter that we're getting. And then we can get to that still place and just allow ourselves to feel into the wilderness, to feel into nature. And as you can probably tell from the way I've been talking, I'm really scent oriented. And so I'm really connected to, essential oils, to finding different things outside that smell really good, fresh cut flowers, like all those types of things can also be helpful for you. But you may also notice that you're more sensory, tactile. And so you want to touch things. And so holding earth in your hands may feel really good, or holding leaves, touching water, getting into a bath can also do that. So the idea here is that we're working with our nervous system to get it relaxed. So over the next few days, and really for the rest of your life, whenever you start to feel stressed out, to go back to the elements and figure out which elements help you ground, which ones help you stay present, which ones support you in really being held when you're feeling unsafe, when you're feeling like your physiological needs, not when you feel, when your physiological needs aren't being met, and when your safety needs aren't being met, when you don't feel like you belong. Go back to the elements and ask them to support you, ask them to help you move through these things. So, like I said at the beginning, our invitation is to take at least a 90-minute, but you can take longer if you want. And if you don't have 90 minutes, that's fine too. But to take some time to go out in nature, to go out and explore, to use your imagination, to bring your inner child online in some way, to really allow yourself to be connected to nature, to the elements, to the wilderness, so that you can be present in your life. And some of you may be saying, well, I don't have, 90 minutes, or I don't have 10 minutes even to go outside. Pop your head out the window if you can and just take a breath of fresh air. Allow yourself to release all of the tension that you're holding onto. And if nothing else, just connect to your breath. That will do a world of wonders. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. If any of you have questions, I see in the chat people have commented about fresh mowed clover and sweetgrass. Those scents really speaking to them, the smell of lavender, sage and pine scents, nature videos, pictures. I've taken nature walks around my neighborhood, enjoying birds and plants in my wee garden on my balcony. Yeah, all of those can be excellent places for us to just get back into nature. And I will share with all of you, I ran an experiment. I think I started it last year, and it continued this year, of this place of trying to get out into nature at least once a month. Like, I don't mean going outside and hanging out on my front lawn, but actually spending a weekend outside. And I've done fairly well. COVID-19 kind of hit it pretty hard, but I've found ways to go with my immediate family, and also out to Warrior Heart Ranch, where we're socially distant and very separate, to do just to be outside. So to go on hikes, to cook outside, to sleep outside, like all of those things can be really nourishing as well. So if you have access to that, I highly recommend doing that, especially with everything that's going on. That can be a way to bring ourselves back home to ourselves, to really ground and be present in our lives. So, any questions? Good. Well, if anything comes up, I'll keep checking the posts where this is showing up. It snowed today. That sounds fabulous and really cold. But my wish for you is that all of you find your little piece of nature, whether that's indoors and using your imagination to take you to far away places, or if you can get outside, like physically outside, to be able to go for a walk or a hike, or just some time to turn off all the electronics and just get unplugged for a little bit. So I look forward to sharing more with you. And when is the next live session? Great question. Let me pull up our election day schedule. The next one is at 4 o'clock Central Time, which is 5 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Mountain Time, and 2 p.m. Pacific Time. Let's see if I can do math. 6, 7, 8, which is 8 p.m. British time, I'm pretty sure. And that will be with Deirdre. It'll be Vote for You, Personal Sovereignty, Be the Leader and President of Your Own Life. And I'll actually be hosting Deirdre, so I'll see you all briefly then before I turn it over to Deirdre. My love to all of you. Please go out and enjoy yourself. Enjoy rest, if nothing else. Mwah. I'll talk to all of you soon. Bye.